local government to be able to decide what they want their area to look like. And if they want a particular minimum wage that's going to hurt business in their area, one would argue they should be free to do that. On the other hand, and this is where it does get complicated, we are a regional economy, and St. Louis City is one of the major economic engines in this area. And if St. Louis City does poorly, we do poorly as a region. Just as in Kansas City, I mean, we're sort of bracketed on both sides of the state with this. And what you're going to see, if the city can impose these minimum wages, and if the minimum wage they're setting is higher than what the market would set it at, which it appears to be, you're going to see businesses move out of the city into the county or other regions, or not come into the area, and then the region is going to suffer.
It's a complicated argument, or a complicated issue.
It is.
Because on one hand, as you rightfully point out, you can say, hey, wait a minute, this community, you want to inflate the salaries to something that the market isn't bearing for the benefit of one, but to the detriment of another. And so we don't want that city to do that. But we'll allow this other city to give all sorts of tax rebates to a business to stick it to the people, help some people, but hurt other people. So why should one city be allowed to give tax breaks, but another city not allowed to have a minimum wage?
I understand. I'm with you on the tax breaks.
Right.
And here's the other part of the issue too, McGraw, and I think this is one that people don't really wrestle with. They deal with it at an emotional level, and that is, you're not really helping the people you say you want to help. If government really wants to help ensure people have a living wage, if you will, you wouldn't eliminate entry-level jobs, which benefit a whole different class of people. That, you know, it's my kids who need to learn how to show up on time, do the job, be respectful to people. What you would do is you would look at things like the income tax credit, the earned income tax credit, where what you would do, and I'm not saying I'm for this, but instead of hitting all of these companies that have entry-level jobs, you would say we want a robust earned income tax credit. All businesses are going to bear part of that brunt by a tax, which we will use to fund that credit.
It's an interesting argument, one in which we already see, because a lot of entry-level positions are fast food, restaurants. We're already starting to see, what restaurant did I go into the other day? Walked up to the counter, and the woman said to me, if you use our touch screen behind you, we'll give you 10% off. It was like, wait, you're telling me to put you out of business.
Right. Well, that's the natural consequence when you tell businesses that they're going to have to pay more than the market will bear. They're going to look for other alternatives because it does hit their bottom line.
Yeah. So this is working its way through the legislature.
It is, and I believe the governor has signaled that he will sign it, and it has an emergency clause, so it will go immediately in effect.
So the state could then, they could put something on the ballot to have the state then raise the minimum wage.
They could.
But a city can't do it.
That's right. That's what this statute would provide, that they're preempted by state law from setting the minimum wage.
Yeah.
And so it's we'll see how it moves along. I think what we're going to see is a state take action.
Yeah. It is interesting how they sure are happy to limit the minimum wage, but they're not so fast to limit a city's ability for a tax or a TIF.
Yes, like the transportation development districts, which I believe Graham Renz talked about. Chesterfield, where I live, and I happen to be, out of full disclosure, I happen to be a resident of the Chesterfield Valley Transportation Development District.
Okay, yes.
And
you'll be one of the 6 people voting on that.
I think there's a little over 100. Okay. But you're right, it's limited. It imposes a 3/8 cent sales tax for anyone who shops in that, the longest strip mall in the country.
Right.
So Walmart. And just to show how these things can get out of control, we now have in Chesterfield, at the intersection of Wild Horse Creek and Kerrs Mill, a lovely wall. And I mean, it is a monument. I'm not sure a monument to what.
Right.
Because it just says Kerrs Mill on it. And I couldn't find anything that told me that Kerrs Mill was a historic or famous kind of site.
Right.
It cost over $500,000. And McGraw, this is one where, unfortunately, on radio, you need the visual.
Right.
It is this huge. Now,
Well, they kind of redid that area over there a little bit, right?
Yeah, but not quite like those of us who lived in the transportation district thought it would be redone. We actually thought it would be just a straight intersection.
Right.
If you've ever been there, it's a little complicated intersection.
Yeah.
It does have water there, so there's a bridge there. And so, in fairness to the city, there is a retaining wall there. Maybe that's to help prevent more flooding or excess water. But they built a wall, and a wall with a tower, McGraw. This thing is an incredible.
For $500,000.
A little over $500,000.
Was that all part of the tax raised by the TDD?
Yes, it was, and that's one of the issues. There is that the TDD, issues these bonds. It has the sales tax coming in to pay it off. There's a pool of money, if you will. The city can submit invoices to the TDD, which it will pay if they're within the project. And I'll just read this. One of the projects for the TDD was the alignment and improvement of a signalized intersection of Wild Horse Creek Long Road and Kerrs Mill. And so what do we get? We get this incredibly beautiful monument with a tower on it, landscaping, a little over $500,000, and the individuals who are shopping in that strip center at the Walmart, they're paying an extra 3/8 of a cent in order to do that. And now we have them coming back and saying they want to fund an ice rink that's going to be privately owned with $7 million of taxpayer money.
If only the legislature would pass a law saying that towns couldn't do that.
Yes, well, the legislature is responsible for, in the late 90s, enacting a law that allows them to do it. And part of the problem here is the vagueness of it and how broadly it can be applied. And then, of course, you've created this pool of money, which, as we know, it can be hard for our elected officials to ignore.
That is Brenda Talent. I'm sure more of this stuff is online.
It is. ShowMeInstitute.org. Please come visit us.
Brenda Talent, CEO of the Show Me Institute. Thanks for coming in.